All right, I'm really excited about this video. This is a video that I did about a year ago, and it's been pretty much my most popular video, or one of my most popular videos. And so a lot of people have said, hey, give me some 2015 updates. And so here you go. This is what you need to learn if you are wanting to become a web developer now in 2015. We're going to start at the beginner level, and we're going to work our way up to intermediate and advanced. And I'm also kind of going to give you the order that you want to learn things and the possible directions that you can take in your learning experience. So let's just jump right into it. You'll notice here, I'll give you a link. This is a Coggle.it mind map, so this link will be in the description. Everything that's blue has a URL that you can click on, which means I've already got a video for it. Yay, which is nice. So we've got at least a lot of the basics covered, and you'll be able to see as we move along what videos I have covered for you. So if you want to be a web developer, you're going to want to start with HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And what these are is these are the languages that the browsers run. These are three languages that are very core to the internet, because whether you're on an iPhone, Google Chrome, a super old version of Internet Explorer, your browser is going to be running, it's going to be putting together an HTML page with CSS styles. It's going to be adding JavaScript for any functionality on that. So these are the kind of the first three languages you have to learn if you're going to get into web development. And so how do you know when you're done with basic front end? I say when you can put together an HTML page, style it somewhat decently, do some basic JavaScript. And I added jQuery here because that's kind of a basic, get a lot done without a lot of code JavaScript library. And so I actually have a whole series on jQuery, and I'm starting up a series about 3 or 4, maybe 5 lessons in JavaScript so far. So once you've kind of got some basic jQuery down, you're good to move on. You can either go up here to front end or down here to back end. Regardless of which route you take, here's some things you're going to want to learn next. In order, top to bottom, you're going to want to learn how to FTP up to a web host and set that web host up. It's not as complicated as it sounds. I got a video kind of walking it through the whole thing. I recommend HostGator for that. I keep some coupons and deals, by the way, down here on several things, so you want to check that out, especially if you're learning. That's kind of where I keep any coupons that I come across. You want to learn how to set that up. Again, not as hard as it sounds. You're going to want to learn some basic terminal usage. The command line is terrifying to new developers because computers, we tend to think in terms of point and click, whereas the command line is commands that seem scary, but there's only about 10 or 20 commands you have to learn to get started. It's just kind of scary because we're not used to typing out commands. We're used to clicking file open instead of typing file open. It's not that big of a deal. Learn the command line. You'll be really glad you did. Basic SSH is kind of the next thing. So when you're starting off with web development, you start off by FTPing all your stuff up to a server. Later on, as you go, you're going to FTP less and less. You're going to SSH a lot more. So get to know SSH next. GitHub, which is actually a combination of Git and GitHub, which is a website, is kind of the most common place for coders and companies to keep their code, their source code. So you'll definitely want to learn that. That's going to be on so many jobs. So many jobs require you to know GitHub, or will wonder why you don't know it if you're applying. So that's the next thing to go. As you can see, I've got videos for all of these, which will hopefully help you out in your learning. Next thing, you're going to want to learn how the client and server talk to each other. I got 2 videos on that really explain it in hopefully an easy way. I got some kind of basic visuals for you. And then lastly, you're going to want to learn about RESTful web services. This is get, post, put, and delete requests. I kind of have a video that provides a free service for you to learn that with JavaScript. So that's kind of no matter which route you take, you got to learn this stuff too. And I would suggest learning this before you pick a hardcore route, or at least make sure you learn it towards the beginning. So kind of in between basic and wanting to end up here. So let's say you've got basic front end down. Then there's 2 routes for you to go, up here front end or back end. You can learn both, but you generally have to start with one or another. To stereotype things, if you're not sure which you pick, if you like art, creative, graphics, maybe come from a design background, you'll probably feel more at home around front end. If you like data, accounting, finance, budgeting, left brain side of stuff, back end will probably be a more logical choice, although either way, you'll work great in both. If you can do one, you can totally do the other. And so that just might give you an idea of what to try out, or take a day trying out both and see which feels more natural to you. So don't let this daunt you. Don't let this terrify you. This is kind of the entire skill set of a front-end developer these days. And honestly, some of these are a list of things. You don't have to pick them all. So don't get terrified if you feel like you learned a ton and then just now got onto this branch. You want to be a front-end developer. Here's the order that you're going to want to go. The first thing you're going to want to do is learn about some CSS tools. Pre-compilers, Sass, Less, and Stylus. This hasn't really changed over the last year. These are kind of still the big guys, and I think these are the order probably of popularity. And all these are going to do is these are going to allow you to add some more functionality to your CSS. You can create like CSS variables. So you can define at the very top gutter equals 10 pixels. And then from there on out, you can reference gutter, and it'll compile it out to normal CSS. It's not very hard. You can learn this in a day or less. You're going to want to learn one or more CSS frameworks. To start off, we haven't really seen a lot of change with these over the last year. Bootstrap and Foundation are definitely still the most popular CSS frameworks for building a responsive website. Bourbon with Neat is fun. It's very light. Gumby, Skeleton, these aren't even new. These have been around for a while. There's so many CSS frameworks, but still Bootstrap and Foundation are kind of the big ones, the ones that keep staying popular. So learn one or more of those. What those will do is these will help you create a responsive website very easily. A responsive website is basically the kind of website where as you shrink your window size down, it displays it differently. So maybe when you get your window really small, like just this big, it will look like a mobile website. And then as you get it bigger, it looks like a tablet website. When you get your window full size, it looks like a computer website. That's a responsive website. It's changing its layout depending on the size of your screen. And so you can do that very easily with these frameworks. But then you're going to want to learn how to do that by yourself as well. At least be able to kind of get by. You'll never be able to, well, it's going to take forever to hand code a Bootstrap or Foundation, but you'll want to be able to kind of know what's going on behind the scenes so you can do some of your own custom work at some point if you need to. So that's CSS. Not a ton going on. This is not months and months of work. It's really going to happen in a few days, except for this might be a few weeks or a few months, ongoing. You don't have to dedicate yourself to this directly and ignore everything else for a season. So moving on, then next up, I would actually say front-end build tools would be next. So I'm going to rearrange this. Boop. Okay, front-end build tools is next. Next thing you're going to want to learn is build tool. I actually have a video called Why You Need a Build System. I can probably make a link to this. I'll see if I can link this later. And so I won't really explain too much of what that does, except for basically build systems will do things like compile your Sass, Less, Stylus for you. They will take all your JavaScript files and minify them all together into one JavaScript file that the browser loads. These things really speed up your development process and clean up your code base and help your website be more efficient when a user loads it. So the top two task runners, Gulp is definitely number one these days. Grunt is still really big because there's a ton of projects that were built on Grunt. So these are pretty much, if you're starting a new website, pick Gulp hands down. I think the jury has spoken that Gulp is just easier for developers, just like it better. Dependency management is kind of the next thing. This is for JavaScript. How do files require other files to be loaded? In basic JavaScript, like jQuery work, this is not necessary. If you're just using jQuery plugins, lump them all into one file, who cares? But once you start getting a lot of code, you're writing an actual front-end application in one of these frameworks down here, you have to split up your files at this point because you can't have a 2,000-line JavaScript file. That's too much. So you need to break it up into files that each do one thing well. Then you need a way for those files to require each other. Say, I need to load the math component before I start doing math kind of things. So Browserify, I think, is kind of number one on this now. Require.js was number one for a while because it was kind of the first. Browserify came out, and Webpack is very quickly growing because the React community really likes Webpack. If I had to pick one today, I'd pick Browserify or Webpack, and honestly, I can't decide between the two at this point. I definitely wouldn't use Require.js anymore. Not that it's bad, it's still totally fine to use, but these would be my two picks. Bower package management, not as popular as it used to be. More people are using NPM, but Bower is still a very legitimate tool. there's definitely a need for it in specific situations. So Bower's something good to get to know. Yeoman is very cool for generating project folder structures and generating your initial gulp file, grunt file with Browserify and all that. So I have a video on Yeoman that kind of shows you more what that is. It'll get you up and started very, very quickly. A very cool tool to get to know. And then you want to pick a JavaScript framework. And this is really what you'll grow and be good at. There are actually job descriptions for Angular developer, React developer, Backbone developer, Ember developer kind of things. So these are the things where you want to find one that seems to make a lot of sense to you, get really good at it. Now, I put these in order of what I would learn. I would definitely learn React. This is the most popular one today is Angular. And then Backbone was the most popular a year ago. But Angular is now the most popular. And React is growing very, very, very quickly. Facebook backs React. Google backs Angular. And React just has some very cool methodologies behind it. I will be doing React videos in the future. I'm working on some React projects right now. Loving it. It's so different. But it's different for very good reasons. Definitely learn React if you've been scared of it or have been staying away from it. It's going to be a very significant player in the days to come. Flux is the methodology that you will code React with. It's not really a framework. It's more or less a way of coding React. So definitely look into Flux as well if you're looking into React. Like I said, Angular, Backbone, still tons of Backbone jobs out there because Backbone was the JavaScript framework to use for a long time. And honestly, Ember has hung around for a while. It's been around for a while, was not popular, but it's a very good framework, and it is grown in popularity slowly over time. It's very good for large scale apps. It does have its frustrations, but it's not going away, at least not anytime yet. So just not as many jobs out there. So if you're learning, I wouldn't necessarily recommend Ember as your first pick, even if you like it. Mithril and Reactive are kind of cool ones to look at. I would not say learn them first. Reactive is kind of the simplest way. If these are just way too confusing for you and you cannot seem to get it to click, try looking at Reactive. Reactive is very simple, but accomplishes quite a bit. And then you're going to want to learn how to unit test that framework of choice, the framework you've chosen. Mocha and Jasmine are pretty much the biggest ones out there. What is there? There's a lot of other ones, but pretty much Mocha and Jasmine for JavaScript are the top two. I prefer Mocha. No big real reason why. These are very, very similar anyway. If you can do one, you can definitely do the other. And Karma is a test runner, which is kind of cool. You don't have to learn that, but that's noteworthy. So there you go. That's front-end developer. Tons of front-end developer jobs out there. Tons of demand for front-end developer jobs. They're great, great, great jobs. Fun teams to be on. So it's a great track to take. Let's say you're taking the back-end track. Lots of change in the back-end track this year as well. So first off, you're going to want to pick a language. And there are tons of languages for back-end. Oh my goodness, tons of languages for back-end. These are not in order because there's really no right or wrong. My personal favorite, I just love Node.js. We're seeing a lot of companies like Netflix, PayPal, Groupon, the list keeps going and going, switching from these monolithic Ruby on Rails applications to much smaller, broken up Node.js applications with Express or Happy or Koa. So Node.js is very fascinating to me. PHP has not gone anywhere. PHP, if you're going to pick one, I'd say pick one of these three here. Ruby on Rails, Node.js with Express, or PHP with Laravel. Let's say you're just a new learner. Say, tell me one to learn. I say, look into these three languages, find the one that seems to make most sense to you, and go with that. Advantages to PHP, tons of PHP jobs. You don't have to be a rock star to get a PHP job because there's a lot of companies that don't require a lot out of their PHP developers. Because of that, PHP has gotten a bad rap sometimes, even though there are tremendous PHP developers out there. So again, you'll see the pay range is extremely broad for PHP developers because there's just such a range out there. Ruby on Rails is much more specific. It has a Ruby on Rails way. So if you learn it, you'll probably have a little more confidence that you know what to expect from a Ruby on Rails job, whereas this could look 1,000 different ways. This is much more specific. So if you're going to learn Ruby, definitely learn Ruby on Rails first. Sinatra is very cool. It's a micro framework, a lot more like Express for Node. I personally, if you just love JavaScript, then learn Node. There's a growing number of Node jobs. Node is becoming more and more popular every day. Other languages that there's still lots of opportunity, lots of jobs for. .NET, which would most likely be C#. If it's ASP.NET, my recommendation is stay away. Python, which generally will use the Django framework, although there are other Python frameworks out there. Java is still tons and tons of Java jobs. People keep saying Java is going to go away from web development, but it's not done that yet. And there's some great fun new frameworks out there like Play. These are kind of the top 3 Java frameworks for the web: Spring, Grails, Play. If I was new when I was starting off and I was going to learn one, I would learn them in the reverse order. I would learn Play, Grails, Spring. Grails and Play are kind of the newer, more modern takes on web development. And those are kind of duking it out for who's going to be the fun new guy. And then there's just a lot of Spring jobs because Spring's been around for a while. So that's kind of, if you have any kind of Java background, you might want to look at those. And then you'll want to learn how to do, again, unit functional testing for your chosen technology. They're going to have different frameworks. If you're from JavaScript, you can use Mocha for your Node, but it's just going to be different based off the language you have. Some cool upcoming languages, which they're not really upcoming, they're already here. Go, or Golang, is very, very cool. I like Go a lot. It's a lot of fun. Scala, Erlang, also some cool languages just to kind of throw on that list for you. There's probably a dozen more, but those are 3 that I figured I'd throw on the list. And then you're going to want to learn in that language. So you've chosen your language. And if you're still daunted by which language to pick and you say, well, just tell me one language to pick, I'm still going to say pick Ruby on Rails this year. Although I wouldn't be bummed out if you picked Laravel or Express.js, but those would kind of be the 3 frameworks that I'd say to pick from. I would say Ruby on Rails because I think you'd have the highest chance of getting a decent job as a junior developer with Ruby on Rails. But that's my guess. I haven't done that in a while. So you're going to want to learn some things then with that language of choice. You're going to want to learn how to build an API for, say, jQuery to consume. How do I build a RESTful web service that the jQuery, the front end, Angular or whatever, can consume, can use? You're going to want to learn some security. And that's going to be different based off of each framework. So, you'll want to do some research on it. Do some research on Ruby on Rails security. How to secure a Ruby on Rails application. You're going to want to learn authentication and authorization. So that's 2 things, but it's one concept. Authorization is how you verify a user. So they log in with their username and password, or they log in with their Facebook, which is called OAuth 2. And then that's basically authorization. Authentication then basically says, I'm sorry, I flipped these around. So that's authentication. Authorization is whether or not they have access to things. So basically, once the user has authenticated, can I allow them to post on somebody else's Twitter feed? Well, not if they're not authenticated as that user. Can I allow them to view your emails? Well, only if you're authenticated as you and not somebody else. So authorization kind of is a way of locking down your data so people can't see information, delete information they shouldn't see, and delete. So then you're going to want to learn kind of maybe some architecture. Microservices or a service-oriented architecture is kind of ways of getting around building one gigantic monolithic application. So lots of companies start off with their one big application. And then as they grow, that becomes more and more of a pain because now they have 12 developers working in this one big application. And so they have to break it up into services or even smaller into dozens of microservices. So kind of gets a bad rap because there's this old school SOA, which is not kind of what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just the concept of breaking your application up into smaller applications that deploy separately. You're also going to want to learn, of course, how to deploy your server, or you're going to want to learn how to deploy this to a place. Can you deploy your application to, they're all up here on these web platforms. We'll get into those in a little bit. And then you want to learn about caching. Caching is basically a way to store stuff. So say you've tied that, you want to tie it into some databases. So let's make a Ruby on Rails application that connects to a MySQL database. And then let's make a Ruby on Rails application that connects to a MongoDB database. And then let's use Redis for sessions or for some caching. And then two other cool databases to look into are Postgres and Cassandra. And there are many, many, many other ones out there. But these are, some pretty popular ones. MySQL and Mongo, if you're just going to pick two. And then Redis is also a very simplistic database that's good for certain things like sessions and caching, as I mentioned. So deeper into caching, you're going to want to learn how to put Nginx in front of your application. Apache. If you're on, say something like PHP, Apache might make more sense. I'm a big fan of Nginx. And then you'll want to possibly do some in-memory caching, with Memcached is what it used to be. Anyway, so you want to learn how to add some caching layers so you don't always have to hit the database every time a certain email is looked at. Maybe we can cache that email for a while. So next time the user looks for it, boom, we can just pull it right away out of Redis or out of memory. So that's kind of some thoughts on caching. And if you're still with me right now and you're not bored and you're a backend developer and you want to take this thing, kick it up to a higher level, then you're going to want to look at what's called DevOps. And DevOps is this whole world of bridging the server administration world with the developer world. And so it kind of bridges dev and operations. I lost my connection. No. Oh, well, we'll see what happens. Anyway, so DevOps is basically this combination of several things. We're going to automatically spin up servers, and then we're going to automatically provision those servers. And what provisioning means is we're getting them configured. Say we have a Node.js application. To deploy it, we don't have to want to log in through SSH manually, copy our files over. That's a terrible idea. There's so much human interaction. Developer number 13, who's a newbie, is going to blow up your website every time. So you want to try to take a lot of that risk out there and a lot of that manpower out of there. And DevOps is basically the practice of building awesome workflows into all the things developers do every day. So let's take that Node application. We want to add it to a server. So from the command line, we can provision a server. Boom, DigitalOcean just spun up a new server, and it installed Node.js in the correct version we have and all the stuff that it needs. And then from the command line, we can actually deploy that thing straight out. And then we can also monitor that thing. So we know when that server might be getting overloaded. So we can add another server and have it load balance between the two. Maybe have Nginx balance the load between both the servers. So that's kind of the concept, the world that DevOps lives in. You want to learn some web platforms. So many out there. No right web platform out there. DigitalOcean is great for really small projects. Heroku is great for really small projects, but can grow more expensive, significantly more expensive as applications grow. That's about all I have on that. Rackspace is very good. Amazon has, of course, all the services in the world. My goodness, so many to choose from these days. No right or wrong. You got to just kind of look into tons of them. You're going to want to learn server management. That's kind of what I talked about before. Server management, or configuration management, CM is actually kind of what it's referred to as, is the way of allowing servers to automatically get provisioned. Salt, Puppet, Chef, Ansible. Linux is, well, you're going to probably be configuring Linux servers. So Linux isn't really a language or a utility. It's, you just got to get a little bit more comfortable with how the Linux operating system works. Docker is a very, very, very cool thing for doing that. I'm going to actually get into some Docker stuff over here. But look into Docker. That's a huge thing that's changed this year. Docker is really revolutionizing a lot of both development and ops and by containerized applications. Very, very cool. So you're going to want to learn some workflows. There's continuous integration. Continuous integration is basically code is always having tests, unit tests run through GitHub or Travis CI, Jenkins, lots of continuous integration tools. CodeShip is another one. That's kind of, if you're starting with DevOps, this is the first place I would start. Let's start with continuous integration and deployment. Those are kind of like your first big deals. These are some things for DevOps. Workflows that are important. Vagrant is a great tool to learn because Vagrant will help you set up a local development environment that is not your machine. It runs on your machine, but it's the exact same environment as your Amazon server or your Rackspace Linux server is. So that's a very smart. I have a video on Vagrant. I will add that. Capistrano, Fabric, Flight Plan. These are deployment tools. They're all great. You can use any of them for most any application. So you don't have to use Capistrano for Ruby. I've deployed lots of Node.js applications with Capistrano. Fabric is a very simple NPM-based one. It's very, very lightweight, probably the easiest to learn. I mean, you want to learn some deployment strategies. And then lastly, let's just kind of talk about some Docker. Docker's a super fun, cool new thing out here. It's changing about every 3 days. There's a new player out there so who really knows where Docker's going to end up? But you do want to, basically the concept of Docker is let's take this application we built, let's turn it into a container. And so then let's kind of spin up 15 different servers from, say, DigitalOcean and make them act as one giant computer that we can now run 30 copies of our containers in. So if we basically need more power to our website, we just run 4 more web server containers. If you need more database power, you add 3 more database containers. And that's kind of how that works in a nutshell. Koros and Mesos, these are kind of some great operating systems that are working very well with Docker containers. Docker itself gives us 3 really cool utilities. Docker Machine for spinning up things. Docker Machine allows you to just spin up a DigitalOcean or an Amazon Docker server. Docker Swarm is very cool. Now, it's not ready yet, but it's very, very close to being ready for production. Docker Swarm will allow, without installing Koros or Mesos, will allow you to create 10 different servers and talk to them as if they were one. So that's very cool. Docker Compose is also very cool. Kubernetes or however you do pronounce that. Mesosphere, Panamax. These are very interesting ways of managing Docker containers. I'm going to leave that at that because there's still a lot to be said about Docker that I'm not going to get into in this video. There you go. That's web development in 2015. If you're new and I just freaked you out, just take a deep breath, learn these little things on this list here, and pick up, gosh, what is going on? And pick either a framework on front end or back end. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And so it doesn't have to be all that confusing. These are just all the little steps along the way that you're going to want to learn. Hope this helped you out. Have an awesome day. And what a great industry we're in. Yeah.